In my last video, I talked about how I recovered 20/20 vision by learning to release mental strain, and how I learned to do this from a man named Paul Anderson, who lived in Seattle, and how Paul had learned it from the guy who's considered the father of natural vision improvement, William Bates, by reading the writings of William Bates. And the two people Paul admired most in the world, I think, were William Bates and the Dalai Lama. And it used to puzzle Paul that the Dalai Lama wore glasses. He expressed this great admiration for the Dalai Lama, but he would say to me, I don't understand why he wears glasses. Hasn't anybody told him that you don't need glasses? And, having proved to himself that mental tension was the cause of poor vision, and that he had recovered his 20/20 vision by learning to release mental tension, Paul didn't understand why a guy like the Dalai Lama, who comes from a meditative tradition, would not have also discovered that. And so the Tibetan tradition, for those who don't know, the Tibetan meditative tradition is thousands of years old, and a tradition that is oriented towards a deep understanding of the mind, how the mind works in every detail, and a reported benefit of meditation at some stage is developing a mind that's very calm and equanimous, or developing equanimity and control, so that the mind is not the master but the servant. And furthermore, the Tibetan tradition actually has practices oriented towards vision improvement. And one of those practices is the same as one of the Bates exercises, which is called palming. So one of the Bates method exercises is to cup your hands and put them over your eyes, so that there's no pressure on the eyeballs, but you're blocking out every bit of light that you can. And you may notice as you do this that it's very relaxing, not only for the muscles of your eyes, but also for your mind. And if you do this for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you may find it's very calming, and that when you get up from palming, that you see more clearly, you see more sharply. And so it's one of a number of Bates exercises that can help you develop this release of tension, and experience what it's like to see more sharply and progressively more sharply, and so forth. So anyway, this same exercise, I believe, exists in the Tibetan tradition for vision improvement. And so why, if the Dalai Lama had been trained in this tradition, why does he wear glasses? Well, it was a mystery to Paul for his whole life, as far as I know, but I do have a theory about why that might be, and I'll share my idea. And if the Dalai Lama is watching this video, he can leave a message and correct me if I'm wrong. So my thought is that although meditation may be one pathway to releasing mental strain, it's not the only pathway, and perhaps not even the best pathway to releasing the strain that's associated or that's responsible for poor eyesight. Now, I've met many meditators and read widely in the spiritual and meditation literature, and I've never met anyone or heard of anyone who's recovered sharp 20/20 vision by meditating. Now, vision improvement I can imagine I can imagine somebody saying, well, my vision improved during the time I was meditating. But I'm going further than just improving your vision. I'm talking about complete recovery of sharp 20/20 vision. And I've never met or heard anybody who's done that through meditation. And at one point in my life, I also meditated for hundreds and maybe thousands of hours, actually. And I never noticed a difference in my vision or a benefit to my eyesight from that. So what I think is that William Bates had discovered something that no one else has discovered. I think he discovered a pathway in the brain that's responsible for sharp vision and a way to access that and revitalize that that processing network in the brain that's responsible for sharp vision. And I think he was a genius. And I think it's amazing that he discovered this, something that, as far as I can tell, no one else has discovered, including, meditation masters who spent their whole lifetimes in an exploration of the mind and what the mind is and how to work with the mind. And I think William Bates' genius was unrecognized because it ran counter to the economic interests of the business of ophthalmology, which was, at the time that he lived, the business of ophthalmology, the economic engine of the business, was prescribing glasses. It was new, and they were being widely prescribed, and that's how people were going to be making a living at the ophthalmology college where Bates taught. But Bates had a scientific mind, and he was interested in understanding why vision went bad in the first place and how it could be recovered. And he used instruments to look into people's eyes as they focused near and far, into animals' eyes, and he eventually came to understand it. He solved the problem, but he was kicked out of the ophthalmology school for teaching natural vision recovery because it was counter to everything they were doing at the school. Well, interestingly, the same sort of thing happened to my teacher, Paul Anderson. He had a business teaching natural vision improvement in Seattle, Washington, and he was forced by the state of Washington to stop teaching natural vision improvement because the legal right to say anything, to earn money saying anything about vision or how vision works, was reserved for people who'd been to medical school and had their degree in ophthalmology or optometry. So he had to quit practicing in his lifetime. But as I've talked about in other videos, there's new scientific research that shows, that very much vindicates William Bates's attribution of poor vision to mental strain. And the new scientific terminology would be more along the lines of brain processing. There's brain processing issues that are responsible for many functions in our body that we used to think were just a defect in that part of the body, but really they're a processing problem in the brain. And that's essentially what William Bates discovered about vision, that it's a processing problem in the brain. And secondarily, it affects tension in your eyes and in the shape of your eyeballs and so forth, but primarily the issue is in the brain. So as for the Dalai Lama, he's revered for many reasons, and one of which is that he doesn't represent himself as somebody who knows everything or that he's accomplished everything. So I suspect that, so maybe he doesn't know that perfect vision without glasses is possible, and I suspect that if that ever became a priority for him to regain perfect eyesight, he'd be very open to learning about that from somebody who knew more than he did. In the next video, I'm planning to share the Bates exercise that was the most profound for me in recovering my own sharp vision. It's a single exercise that made all the difference. It's one that I could do anytime, anywhere. And it's a beautiful example of the difference between, this new pathway in the brain that I think Bates discovered that may be different than the pathways that you may explore or discover with different kinds of meditation. So stay tuned.